Religion works best when children are indoctrinated very young. Before they can even go through their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, we're already teaching them and filling their heads with concepts of a God and the supernatural. But basically, this question and argument's been around for a long time, and it basically is what's known as the first cause postulate. The first cause postulate states that everything in existence has a cause. Existence is dependent on or was created by something else. Thus, the religious God believer will argue that our very existence is somehow proof of a supernatural creator that created the universe and thus started the chain of causality. It had to be some sort of supreme being that got the chain of causality started. That's the basic premise of the religious stance when it comes to the creation of the universe. So there's a few flaws in this way of thinking. The first one is that the first cause postulate makes the nasty and sneaky assumption that all events have a cause. We can start right there. That assumption is simply not true. We know through modern physics that there are events that occur in nature, even if on a subatomic level, that do indeed occur without cause. These are things that are easily looked up and researchable, namely like the creation and destruction of particles and antiparticles, and things like that. But the whole concept that everything must have a cause, right off the bat, you have to call that into question and call it into focus and scrutiny. You have to call it into scrutiny because it's not necessarily true. It's incorrect to claim that all things must have a cause. The next issue that we can bring up about this argument is that the postulate assumes that whatever this first cause was, meaning a God, that it's somehow immune to the application of the argument itself. Meaning if everything in existence has a cause, gives one the right to rationally stop his God as the first cause. By logic, a God could have been created by an even greater and earlier creator, a cause zero, so to speak, and so on and so on. And you get that infinite regression. Let alone, you would still then have to somehow present a cause that whatever this first cause is, has a personal stake in our own lives, as in the case of the traditional God concept. So due to the fact that the first cause argument doesn't even stand up to its own application, it's not internally consistent. It doesn't stand up to critical thinking within its own framework. It has to be swiftly invalidated and viewed as run-of-the-mill religious nonsense, religious rhetoric. It needs to be called out as such. The next point that's commonly brought up, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it basically goes like this. A religious believer would say something like, the universe is so beautiful that it's impossible that it was just created by an accident. This point pops up quite a bit in debates with believers, mainly Christians, but I'm not sure why, but sometimes it's called the accidental postulate, and they've given it a formal name, but its basic premise is that the universe and ourselves and the planets, etc., could not have been the result of chance and time alone. That's really what it's getting down to. But even though it's not saying it, the argument at that been some unseen, all-powerful force that allowed or caused our beginning, because complex things do not arise by accident. So this claim is to be approached with what I would say caution, right? So quite simply, I say that because it has what I like to call a stealth assumption, meaning it sneaks in unnecessary philosophical baggage. The claim that the existence of ourselves and the universe we happen to live in, that it could not be accidental, is invalid simply because the word accident sneakily implies a designer or some sort of guiding force that must have somehow been unintentionally deviated from. That's the only way that you get an accident, is if you have some sort of trajectory or planned path and then you deviate from it and something occurs. So by the religious believer saying that it's an accident, it's already baiting the atheist into a fallacious framework where you're automatically assuming there to be some sort of designer or creator. For an accident to occur, there must be some implied, desired, non-accidental state. So this whole ball of wax is invalid. With science and reasoning, none of our cosmological theories imply some sort of plan or desired state. So one could never push the concept of an accident or purpose into a discussion or stance that's not based on, founded on, or grounded in some sort of purpose-oriented design. The development of our universe and our own selves is not said by atheists to be under the control of a designer. So therefore, any claim involving accident simply whiffs and misses the point. It's a straw man that the atheist position doesn't claim to hold. This is yet another example of run-of-the-mill religious nonsense disguised this time around as a valid, logical, philosophical stance, and it still needs to be called out as such. And furthermore, no matter how improbable something may seem, no matter how large the odds, nothing changes the fact that odds do indeed exist and a chance for a positive hit exists as well. Such is the nature of development of our universe.